You know how after an event they do an after action report? Well, we have, for the first time ever seen on the internet, we have Secret Service footage of the advance team. And this is what I wanted to know about. Who's the advance team? Who went and scouted out this place, 10 days or less before Trump was there? Who made the plan that made the perimeter too short? Who left these flat surfaces and lines of sight open that any school kid could be like drawing triangles all day for intersection? I wanted to know. And so thankfully, we do have, it's the first clip there, LD. Secret Service during the assassination attempt. This is kind of like the advance team, then also reacting to the attempt.
Hi, we're Agents Cletus and Spinetti, U.S. Secret Service. We're here doing a pre-event security sweep where Trump will be having his rally in 2 weeks here in Pennsylvania.
Cletus, we've got reports of a man with a rifle near Building 3.
Oh my God, he shot Trump! We at Trump's Secret Service detail that works for the Biden administration consider the security of today's rally to be a great success.
In the immediate aftermath of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, misinformation and conspiracy theories spread rapidly online. It took authorities roughly 8 hours to publicly confirm the identity of the gunman because he was not carrying ID. This allowed ample time for unfounded theories about the gunman's identity to spread widely.
The private investment firm Austin Private Wealth shorted 12 million shares of Trump media stock right before his attempted assassination, meaning that Austin Private Wealth stood to benefit from his death, as Trump stock would likely go down had he been killed. And now Austin Private Wealth is saying that this was a clerical error due to software. Not insider trading, y'all. Whoopsie daisy. It would be great if I could also say all of my bad bets were clerical errors, but us tax slaves, we could never. To put it in perspective, this same scenario played out right before 9/11. Some people in the know bought up these put options on American and United companies on the Chicago Board Options Exchange the week before the attacks on September 11th. Of course, American and United were the two companies that were involved in the attacks. At least $5 million was made by these investors following the September 11th attacks. And not only did this investment company short 12 million shares of Trump stock before his attempted assassination, but they also shorted 34 million shares of Rumble stock at exactly the same time. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to grab a copy of the Deep State Encyclopedia and make sure to subscribe so you catch all my latest videos.
I was looking for my copy of the Deep State Encyclopedia. It must be upstairs. All right, so that's really graceful. She brought that news of the insider trading in a way I saw it first, and I saw other stories on it, and I thought her presentation of it was the best presentation clip to let you know in this time capsule about that news this week. Because my question is, how did the lone gunman do that when you've got insider trades on, example, 9/11? It's not just United Airlines and American Airlines. It was Marsh & McLennan, the place where 9/11 starts, the place that was my former client where I had an office in the World Trade Center. So I have a keen interest in those insider trades of 9/11, of 10/7, and now of July 13th, 2024, because those insider trades, it's not an accident when you do it to Trump and Rumble. Rumble is like the home of all that type of stuff. So if you short 34 million shares of Rumble stock and 12 million shares of Truth Social, and then that doesn't happen, so you use the loophole that they put in for themselves. It's like if you lose the bet, you got to pay. If they lose their bet, they just, write it away. They've got words on paper and it all goes away and they don't owe anything, and water under the bridge, try again next time they will. Probably more successfully. So those pieces are interesting. I also wanted to point out, going back to shout out to Awaken with JP for that Secret Service insight to give us some laughs, because there's a lot of tough information we got to go through tonight. And, they were showing a Keystone Cops aspect of it quite well. If you're not familiar with Keystone Cops, by the way, that's some of the first films they ever made. You should go watch the YouTube clip, Keystone Cops. They're funny. In regard to the Secret Service acting like Keystone Cops, Trump's security detail that day was not Trump's security detail. They had staffed it with DHS replacements who were not very well trained, as we all saw. The the vehicle, I don't want to give away the code names and stuff like that I've heard, but the vehicle Trump was supposed to egress and get out of there in was covered with hydraulic fluid. And then he went to an alternate car to transport him out, but they didn't have a gate to let him out. Similarly, we're going to see footage tonight of, as this is all going on stage, the place is so well secured, police and first responders can't get in, and they actually have to call guys on the other side and back a car several times over the fence to let these guys crawl through a hole. Again, it looks like Keystone Cops. I'm sure all the police and security people, they're well-meaning, but this was set up to be a failure in like 10 different ways from Sunday. Oh, wait, that's a Chuck Schumer expression about how the deep state was going to get Trump. But we'll get to that stuff and how they've been getting at Trump. Scott, what did you think from those blocks?
Well, okay, yeah. So the JP Sears thing, that was hilarious. That was good. It was interesting seeing him actually wearing clothes. That was surprising. That's like the first time I've ever seen him like wearing clothes. Interesting. But anyway, I was noticing something. So I heard about the stock trade or the short on Trump's company, but I didn't hear about the Rumble. Now, the connection with Rumble and all this, obviously, besides all the conservative commentators on there. But a huge investor in Rumble is Peter Thiel, right? And I was just looking it up, and he was investing into Rumble through Naria Capital, which is owned by JD Vance. So
interesting.
JD Vance and Peter Thiel have large vested interest in Rumble at the same time. So that's really, really interesting.
Small world. It's a small world after all.
Yeah.
After all. Also, I want you guys to understand this before we get to the clip in case you don't see it later. The alleged shooter on the roof that gets hit by the counter sniper team and leaves a pool of blood, which is evidence, right? That guy, he didn't have identification, apparently. Allegedly, I'm having trouble not sneezing right now. Allegedly, they identified him through a DNA test, Scott.
Wow.
So I know you get DNA from his brain matter splattered all over, but what are you comparing it to? Because if this guy had a clean record and passed the background check to work in the medical home situation, wherever he was at the retirement place, right? Where in his history do they have his DNA on file? These are just little questions. Like, that was how they identified him. Like, that day, they didn't have parents come identify the body who had said our son's missing and et cetera. Like, there's all that we have to cover as well. But it's just a really strange way. And who did it and how did they do it? So I can't even say, like, if we had to start with logic, what's the first piece of identification? And they've washed the scene. They didn't set up a crime scene. You see the FBI guy rinsing the roof off. How many casings? How many brass casings were on the roof? We don't know. We don't know who took what shots yet. They make a big mystery. And then the Wall Street Journal complains people are being conspiracy theorists. Yes, because you're leaving a bunch of puzzle pieces out on a very important topic, and people are seeking to understand what those missing puzzle pieces represent. Now, thankfully, the Wall Street Journal did not feature anything that we covered in the first 7 hours last week. They didn't feature anything we're going to talk about tonight. Those, I've never even seen those claims. That's how straw manish they have to go, because if they go to, hey, there's some people saying there's a second shooter, well, there's going to be a ton of evidence on the scale for that by the time we get done with tonight's show. So, original identification of one shooter in question. Identification of other shots that came from various distances according to mathematics, algebra, and trigonometry. Those questions have to be answered as well. And that's what our government taxpayer dollar forensic stuff should be getting done. And it shouldn't fall on the shoulders of open source investigators. However, the open source investigator community is strong. They're on this. Like, in years past, we would have to be like, hey, people, look at this. You need to, like, we need some smart people to check this out. Smart people are on it like this time. And I have not seen a qualified, like, tier 1 sniper that doesn't think something other than the official story. Everyone with legitimate hands-on experience, they've done this job. They've done private security details thousands of times. We're going to hear from the representative, Corey, in a second, because he was hilarious and CNN tried to shut him down. There's much more to be seen from this. And what is this? You're seeing more strings of the deep state, right? I'm not saying the whole thing was orchestrated, but you could definitely create a situation, wind somebody up and send them into that and get that result, especially if you had other layers of shots coming from different directions at the same target in a triangulation of fire, which has gone on in discussion in the American population since the killing of Kennedy, the first Kennedy, Jack, not the Bobby, right? So DNA, there's missing pieces. They're making people have conspiracy theories by hiding those pieces from the public. Where's the brass? How many shots did he take?
Yeah, I think you're so dead on with the fact that it just seems like immediate cover up, right? And then the official story is always just they try to cement it in place at first, and then you're not allowed to question it. Then it's like here's the narrative, it's all yours, and you're not allowed to question it. Like that seems like a very standard tactic. Something I was gonna say too is that I got to see at Freedom Fest, I did get to see RFK speak. And it was really interesting, but it seemed like the security wasn't what I thought it would like to me. I don't even know if I should say this on the internet, but geez, like I was just like, so they cleared out the room. So it was Friday. It was the day before the Trump incident. And I have to admit, being in the audience, it was just kind of an air of like, it was just like this intense, like kind of just like, God, like anything could happen right now. Like this is crazy, like so high stakes, you know what I mean? Like it's so crazy. And so it was very surreal to be in a situation like that. But what they'd done is it was in the main, there was this large room, probably 1,000 chairs, maybe more, where the whole audience had been there the whole time watching all the other presenters, right? So it wasn't like a secured area at all whatsoever. And so when RFK came out, really all they did is they cleared the room and they had everybody come through one entrance through like a metal detector, and they searched everyone's bag and metal detectors and everything. And there were guards everywhere. But still, I was like, the room itself, that's a huge vulnerability. Like there was people coming and going into that room all day for the last 3 days, man. Like if I wanted to stash something underneath the chair or anything like that, like plant something underneath the stage, like that would have been very easy to do. I'm not aware of their security protocol for like clearing the room ahead of time. They might have had those little mirror things that you walk around and check underneath all the chairs. But I was just like sitting there thinking like, God, like I felt kind of just due to the fact that I didn't feel like they'd secured the room, in a sufficient way, that I was like, dude, anything could happen right now. This is crazy. So that was like kind of me sitting there. That was like kind of the feelings I had. And so, you know, the whole stand down thing, it's just on its face obvious, like whether it was intentional or just incompetence, I'm sure we'll get more evidence to one way or the other there. But I mean, that's the name of the game right here. It was just like a complete stand down, and it's just shocking. Yeah.
Yeah. And, having an advanced team is not just like going there in advance and making a plan. It's also having people that watch as the stage is set up, as the podium is constructed, as all these other things are wired up and fired up. There are people there that have to watch that, and they go over what's going on here, and they have to check to make sure so that they have certainty. Otherwise, they can't do their job of protection adequately. That's been a thing that's gone on for a long time. I encountered a Secret Service advanced team when I was in college. I was walking to some sort of mathematics class because it was Willard Building on campus, and I had to go across like the big quad in front of the president's house on campus. So I'm walking across there, and there's these people in suits, and they're going around and they're looking at stuff and whatever. And I went up, I'm like, who are you people and what are you doing here? And they're like, we're a Secret Service advanced team. The president's coming, H.W. Bush is coming there for re-election or whatever. And I'm like, bro, didn't you tell me too much already? Because I had a sense of humor, right? They don't. So I didn't stay very long. I got out of there, and I didn't go to see HW because I wasn't into politics, and I didn't, he wasn't on my radar, right? I was like, where's the next party, right? I'm in college. I'm not paying attention. But I do remember that, like, these were people in advance checking out to make sure that where he was going to be later was like a safe place, and they had it covered, right? Also, while I went to school, there was a mass shooting where a sniper hid in these bushes. It was an Army ROTC student, right? Because like you go to a university, they're running ROTC. So some of those students are getting trained how to blow stuff up and kill people while you're just thinking you're sitting in class with them, right? One of those people went haywire, went out to the quad in front of like the big cafeteria building, and they got it. I don't know, maybe 3 people or something like that. But that was a thing that happened. I remember it was like a Kent State type of thing. But I was in Pennsylvania at a college that is named after the state. I'll let you guess. It's not the University of Pennsylvania. That's Ivy League. I went to the state school. It was like the state Penn State. There you go. Not proud of it, but I did pay them a lot of money for their not education that I got there. All right. So in this situation, I want to show you this. This is a piece of history, and this is a history show. It's also a comedy show, so I'll make you laugh every now and then. Katzenbach memo to Bill Moyers, November 25th, 1963. This is what sets in motion. Oswald's the lone gunman. He's dead because this is Sunday night. This is after Jack Ruby killed him. Katzenbach, who's a Rhodes Scholar, writes this memo to Bill Moyers, who you think is the nice guy on PBS who interviews like Joseph Campbell. Bill Moyers used to be a cutthroat psychological warfare operations dude for like LBJ back in the day. So he seems like a nice old man, but what he was doing back with Katzenbach is helping to solidify the deep state's cover up and to make sure that the blueprint for Kennedy's assassination cover up was in place. So if we were to go to the Katzenbach memo and we go over here to the browser, we open it up. I'll put my spectacles on and we'll get educated on this. This comes from the Mary Farrell Foundation. Mary Farrell Foundation has a treasure trove of resources, documents, artifacts, all the things you need to read. Like you could probably find CIA document 1035-960 concerning criticism of the Warren Commission report. That's where conspiracy theory as a pejorative term comes into our vernacular. This is the entry on the cover up, and under the cover up, we have the Katzenbach memo. Again, he's a Cecil Rhodes scholar, or you could say he's a Rothschild scholar because the Rothschild family funded the Rhodes scholarships. On November 25th, 1963, the day of the Kennedy funeral, Assistant Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach sent a memo to Bill Moyers of the new Johnson White House. He had begun writing it a day earlier, within hours after Oswald's death at the hands of Jack Ruby, who later died at the hands of MK Ultra Dr. Jolyon West. But we'll not tangent and segue right now. Continuing reading. The second paragraph stated, quote, "The public must be satisfied that Oswald was the assassin, that he did not have Confederates who are still at large, and that evidence was such that he would have been convicted at trial, even though he can't defend himself because he's dead now. Given that the authorities could not possibly, by November 25th, know these things to be true, and Katzenbach later admitted he knew very little at this stage, the memo is clearly advocating a political course irrespective of the truth of the assassination." This is kind of like those guys who predicted 9/11 in that 1998 paper. It's like, if we just did this, we could have this happen, right? So this is very interesting. Continuing the quote, "Speculation about Oswald's motivation ought to be cut off, and we should have some basis for rebutting thought that this was a communist conspiracy, as the Iron Curtain press is saying, and a right-wing conspiracy to blame it on the communists. Unfortunately, the facts on Oswald seem about too obvious: Marxist, Cuban, Russian wife, etc. The Dallas police have pulled out statements on the communist conspiracy theory, and it was they who were in charge when he was shot and thus silenced." Now, I also want to point out something else very quickly. Dallas had a police chief. His last name's Cabell, Cabell. He had a brother, Charles Cabell, I believe. I could look this up in the history blueprint, but I don't want to get distracted from this article that we're reading right here. Anyway, JFK fired Allen Dulles, Charles Cable, some other people, and JFK then gets shot in Dallas, where that dude's brother is the police chief, and that guy who he fired, Dulles, right, becomes the number 2 on the whole investigation. Really, like, it's Earl Warren, who's a Supreme Court justice and a Freemason, and then you have Dulles, and Dulles just runs the whole thing. That's like Philip Zelikow coming to the 9/11 Commission report with a pre-baked, here's how it happened before we even conduct the investigation. It is the hallmark of a cover-up by the deep state, and this is a continuing legacy from JFK's assassination. The people who covered it up gained power. They are the same people who passed on power to the current generation of tyrants and despots that we're encountering. So let's finish out the Katzenbach memo right here. Katzenbach's memo advocated a public FBI report to satisfy this objective, though he noted the possible need for the appointment of a presidential commission. So the Warren Commission, he says they're going to have that, of unimpeachable personnel. Future President Gerald Ford was on that, to review and examine the evidence and announce its conclusions. So right here, he's come up with, we got to have a Warren Commission thing that we control. He ended by advocating a quick public announcement to, quote, head off speculation or congressional hearings of the wrong sort, meaning stuff that they didn't run. Eastern establishment, people of the Cecil Rhodes, take over America credo. Here is the memorandum for Mr. Moyers, FBI document 62-109060, JFK HQ file section 18. Again, Mary Farrell Foundation. If you've never, looked up the documents and had questions about this stuff, this is really interesting history. This is the type of stuff that if you pay a lot of money to go to university, they should teach you. Like, here's the they, them, those, the 5 W's plus how of these situations. At least you'd have the starting point for thinking. Okay. This, like, it wasn't the FBI saying, oh, Kennedy was killed by Oswald. It's a Rhodes Scholar working in the LBJ administration that took power after they killed the guy that stood in the way of their power. So anyway, that's the Katzenbach memo. It goes on. There's a couple more pages, but it is a artifact of history that exists that oftentimes people are not understanding of, or correlating that to like these things that you're seeing about the current assassination attempt. And the only reason it's an attempt and not successful is because dude turned his head real quick while he's pointing at the immigration slides where he went off teleprompter and was doing a bunch of like, if Deep State's going to shoot him and he goes off teleprompter, they don't know when he's going back on teleprompter. So that might have also caused, like, they got to get him when he's like gettable. Also, they noticed the shooter on the roof. That had to put some pressure in that guy to squeeze off his shots before he gets shot, because there's no walking out of that situation in any way, shape, or form. Right? It's like, that's death by cop. That's assassination by your own stupidity right there at that point. So, did you know about the Katzenbach memo? Did you guys know?
No, I didn't know about this artifact. That's really interesting. It's got my wheels spinning over here about another very I'm not going to go off topic too far, but I got another artifact for us here too when you're done with this.
What do you got?
Well, I mean, obviously not news to you, but I'm sure like this was news to me in the last few years, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, but like obviously the 1999 civil trial with Martin Luther King, Lloyd Jowers, right? And how I'm looking at the court transcript right here, and literally it says, like, to the jury, the judge is like, do you find this Lloyd Jowers participated in a conspiracy to do harm to Martin Luther King? Your answer is yes. Do you also, but it basically says, do you also find that these government agencies, it's like military agencies, government agencies, local police, conspired to assassinate Martin Luther King? So it's like in the court record, guilty in a civil trial, 1999, Dr. Pepper was the lawyer, you know what I'm saying? It's like, so there's a lot of historical precedents to these, whether it's, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King, like, literally the government has been found guilty in conspiring to assassinate people. So it's like, this is not far-fetched. This is not out of the realm of possibility. It should be entered into the conversation, and we shouldn't be criticized for questioning it.
Indeed. And I did not know about that either. So I remember when I had that moment of realization, it was, let me go back here. The year is 2006. The month is June. The date is probably the 6th, probably June 6th. I'm in Chicago. Project Constellation was published 1 week earlier. I'm at a 9/11 conference because Project Constellation generated a bunch of interest and they wanted me to come to that conference. I've never been to any of these conferences. I was really concerned for my safety, and I didn't really, there was a lot of unknowns. So I get there and they give me a table. And I guess like people sell their stuff at the conferences. They get their books and they put it on the table and stuff like that. So I got a table. And this guy comes over and he doesn't have his table. And I'm like, what's your name? He said, William Pepper. I'm like, what do you do? He's like, well, I proved that MLK was, there was a conspiracy by the US government. And he's like, I won the case for the families a couple years ago. And I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like, you can have my table, bro. I'm like, I have nothing. I'm not selling anything here. Just fucking set it up, dude. So he was also like, he was much more serious and like, he's about doing his thing, right? Because like, I'm there, I'm younger. There's a big age gap at that point. So I didn't have a lot of banter with him. But once I found out who he was, I was like, you can have my table and, have at it. And then I, when I got home, I looked into his work because I didn't have the ability to know about it beforehand. So yeah, once upon a time, I was like, check box on that one, right? Like, they proved it in court. Like, he's the guy. I met the guy who did the thing and proved it in court for the family, and the family got paid a nominal amount, but it's on the record that happened now.
Yeah,
right?
that's an interesting part of it. They sued for $100, $100. Like, they weren't looking for millions and millions of dollars. They just wanted this information out there, which is very honorable. And yeah, here's the Dr. William Pepper, Orders to Kill. Now, this book was written before that trial, but there's still really good information in there. And yeah, that's a crazy one. I mean, and then it just stops there. It's like there's no
they never did it again.
That. There's no accountability. Like, oh yeah, and of course they never did it again. They closed that office. Like they
just happened in the 60s, everybody. It never happened beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
wild. Maybe not.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos. They're maybe even doing Q&As. And these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come